Stop what you are doing right now. I need you to listen very carefully because what I am about to tell you is going to make you angry. It is going to make you uncomfortable, and by the end of this story, you are going to understand exactly why some people do not deserve your forgiveness. My name is Nadia Simmons. I am 68 years old. For 40 years, my own family called me a burden. They said it to my face. They said it behind my back. They said it like it was fact. And for a long time, I believed them. But here is what they never saw coming. I bought the house they grew up in, and I bulldozed it to the ground, right in front of them, and I did not feel a thing. Stay with me because the ending is going to change how you see everything. Subscribe, hit that notification bell because I am only getting started. I grew up in a 3-bedroom house on Maple Creek Road outside of Memphis, Tennessee. My father, Raymond, bought it in 1974 with money he saved for 6 years working double shifts at the plant. He was proud of that house. He used to walk through it on Sunday mornings with his coffee, running his hand along the walls like he was making sure it was still real. There were 3 of us, my older sister, Keisha, me, and my younger brother, Terrence. Keisha was the favorite. She was always the favorite. From the time she could walk, she had something I did not have, a shine. People noticed her. My mother, Gloria, would light up when Keisha walked into a room. Her voice would change. Her whole body would soften. It was like watching someone turn on a lamp in a dark room, and I was the shadow standing right next to it. I was not a difficult child. I was quiet, I did my homework, I stayed out of trouble. But in my family, quiet was not valued. Quiet was suspicious. My mother used to look at me across the dinner table like she was trying to figure out what was wrong with me. One night, when I was about 7 years old, I came home with a good report card, straight A's. I handed it to her at the kitchen table. She looked at it, then she looked at me and said, "Keisha got straight A's too, but she also made the cheerleading squad. What else did you do?" I did not answer. I took the report card back and went to my room. That was the first time I understood what I was to that family. By the time I was 12, the word had stuck, burden. My Aunt Diane, my mother's older sister, was the only person who ever looked at me like I was a person and not a problem. One afternoon, I was sitting on the back porch reading, and I heard my mother talking to Diane inside the kitchen. The window was open. I heard every word. My mother said, "That girl is going to be a burden her whole life. She does not have what it takes." Diane did not respond right away. Then she said, very quietly, "Gloria, that child is going to prove you wrong one day, and when she does, you better be ready." I did not know it then, but Aunt Diane was right. It just took a very long time to get there.
After high school, I left. I did not make a scene. I did not cry at the door. I packed a bag, took the money I had saved from babysitting, and got on a bus to Nashville. My mother did not drive me to the station. Keisha did not say goodbye. Terrence was the only one who walked me to the front door. He did not say much. He just looked at me with that look he always had, the one that said he felt sorry for me but was not brave enough to do anything about it. Nashville was loud and fast. I got a studio apartment that smelled like someone else's cooking. I enrolled in a nursing program at a community college and worked nights at a diner to pay for it. I did not call home much. When I did, the conversations were short. My mother would ask about the weather. She would not ask about school. She would not ask if I was happy. Then she would talk about Keisha, about what Keisha was doing, about how proud she was, and I would listen and say nothing and hang up feeling like I had never left Memphis at all. Nursing was hard. The hours were brutal. The pay was low, but I was good at it. I was patient. I was steady. I did not flinch when things got difficult. I had been practicing that my whole life. By 26, I had my license. By 30, I was a charge nurse. By 35, I had saved enough to start investing in real estate on the side. Small properties at first, a duplex, a single-family rental. I learned everything I could. I read, I studied, I made mistakes, and I kept going. Nobody in my family knew. I did not tell them, not because I was hiding it, because no one had ever asked. By 45, I owned 11 rental properties. By 50, I had a management company running them. I was not rich the way people on television are rich, but I was comfortable. I was stable. I had built something real, entirely on my own, with no help from anyone, and the family that had called me a burden did not know a single thing about it. When holidays came, I would sometimes drive back to Memphis. I would sit at the table and listen to Keisha talk about her life. Keisha had married a man named Calvin who worked in sales and smiled too much. They had a nice house that Gloria had helped pay for. Keisha's life looked good from the outside. It looked like everything my mother had always wanted. And sitting at that table, watching Gloria beam at her, I would feel something cold settle in my chest. Not jealousy, something older than that. Something that had been there since I was 7 years old, holding a report card no one cared about. I never told them what I had built. I let them think I was still struggling. There was something quiet and satisfying about proving them wrong without them ever knowing it. Keisha called me once, around Christmas, and asked if I needed help paying for anything. The way she said it, there was pity underneath the words, like she was reaching down to someone who was drowning. I said, "No, thank you." She said, "Well, you know where to find me if things get tough." I hung up and looked out my window at the Nashville skyline. Things had not been tough for me in over a decade, but she did not know that. None of them did. But life does not stay quiet forever, and in 2019, everything changed. My mother, Gloria, was 72 when the phone call started. Keisha called me one evening in February. Her voice was different, softer, warmer, like she was playing a role she had rehearsed. She said Mom had been to the doctor, said her memory was slipping, said she needed help, real help. She said she could not do it alone. I almost laughed. Keisha had never done anything alone in her life. But I did not laugh. I listened, and at the end of the call, Keisha asked if I could contribute some money toward Gloria's care. She gave me a number. It was not small, but I could afford it, so I sent it. The first transfer was fine. I told myself this was what family did. The second transfer came 2 weeks later. Mom needed new medication. The insurance was not covering it. Could I help? I sent it. The third time, it was the house. A pipe had burst. The repair was expensive. Could I chip in? I sent it again. By the fourth month, I was sending money every 2 weeks. Each time, Keisha had a new reason. Each time, the amount was a little higher. And each time, she wrapped it in just enough emotion to make me feel like saying no would mean I did not care about my own mother. I did not question it. I wanted to believe Keisha had changed. I wanted to believe that after all those years of being pushed aside, my family was finally reaching out because they actually needed me, not just my money, me. Terrence called once during this time. He sounded nervous, the way he always did. He said Gloria was doing okay. He said Keisha was handling everything. He said, "She has got it under control, Nadia. Do not worry." I asked if he had seen the bills. He said he had not. I asked if he had been to the house recently. He said he had not been in a while. I let it go. That was my first mistake. The money kept flowing. Gloria called me once, late at night. Her voice was thin and confused. She asked me where she was. I asked her what she meant. She said, "I do not know where I am, Nadia. This place does not look right." I asked for the address. She could not remember it. I called Keisha the next morning. Keisha said Gloria was just disoriented, said it happens sometimes with the memory issues, said not to worry. I did not worry. I should have. By the end of that year, I had sent Keisha a total of $47,000. $47,000. For a woman I had spent decades being invisible to, I had handed over almost $50,000 without a single receipt, a single invoice, or a single proof that any of it had gone where Keisha said it was going.
I did not track it. I did not question it. I told myself this was what it meant to be a good daughter. I was a fool, and my sister was counting on me being exactly that. What made it worse was how good Keisha was at making it feel natural. She never asked directly. She would call and spend the first 10 minutes talking about Gloria, how Mom had a good day, how Mom had laughed at something on television, how Mom had asked about me. I would feel something warm move through my chest because for the first time in years, my mother was being mentioned in a conversation, not as an afterthought, but as a reason someone was calling. Then at the very end, Keisha would say, "Oh, by the way, there's this bill coming up," and I would send the money before we even hung up. She had turned 40 years of wanting my mother's attention into a weapon, and I let her use it. It started with a letter. A piece of mail that showed up at my apartment in Nashville in March of 2021. It was addressed to Gloria Simmons, not to me, but it had my address on the envelope because someone had changed the forwarding address on Gloria's mail to mine without my knowledge. I opened it because it looked important. It was a property tax notice for the house on Maple Creek Road, and it was marked delinquent. Not a little delinquent. Months behind. The amount owed was significant. I stared at that letter for a long time. Then I called Keisha. She answered on the third ring. I read her the notice. I asked what was going on with the property taxes. She paused, just a beat too long. Then she said, "Oh, that is old. I already took care of it." I asked her to send me proof. She said she would get back to me. She never did. I called again 3 days later. Same answer. I called a fourth time. Keisha did not pick up. So I did something I had not done in years. I drove to Memphis myself. I did not tell anyone I was coming. I drove straight to Maple Creek Road. The house was empty. Not empty the way a house looks when someone is away for the weekend. Empty the way a house looks when no one has lived in it for months. The yard was overgrown. The curtains were drawn. There was a new lock on the door that I had never seen before. I stood on that porch for a long time, and something cold and slow moved through me like ice water filling up from the bottom. I drove to the county clerk's office that afternoon. I sat down at the counter and asked the woman behind the desk to pull the records for Maple Creek Road. She typed in the address. She turned the screen toward me. And there it was, a deed transfer, dated 11 months earlier. The property had been sold. The seller listed on the document was Gloria Simmons, represented by Keisha Simmons, power of attorney. My hands were shaking. I asked for a copy. She printed it out. I took it to my car and I read it 3 times. The signature on the transfer was Gloria's name, but it did not look right. I had seen my mother's handwriting my entire life. The signature on that document was close, but it was not hers. It was Keisha's handwriting, forged. My sister had forged my mother's signature. She had used the power of attorney she had obtained months earlier, during Gloria's decline, to sell the family home. The house my father had saved 6 years to buy. The house Gloria had lived in for 45 years. Keisha had sold it, and she had kept the money. The sale price was $187,000. I sat in that parking lot and I did the math. $47,000 I had sent for care, plus $187,000 from the house. Over $230,000. Stolen. And Gloria, confused and lost, had been moved into a subsidized apartment while Keisha pocketed everything and told the family it was for medical bills. I did not cry. I did not call anyone. Something inside me went very still, like an engine shutting off. I folded the document, put it in my jacket, and drove back to Nashville in silence. And by the time I crossed the state line, I had already begun to plan. People think revenge is hot. They think it is loud and angry. It is not. Real revenge is cold. It is patient. It moves like water underneath the surface where no one can see it. By the time anyone realizes what is happening, it is already done. When I got back to Nashville, I did not call Keisha. I did not confront her. I did not call the police. I did not do any of the things a normal person would do. Instead, I went to work. I went to bed, I got up the next morning, and I did it again. On the outside, nothing changed. I answered Keisha's calls when she made them. I sent a small transfer when she asked. I kept my voice warm and my tone even. I gave her absolutely nothing to be suspicious about. But underneath all of that, I was moving. Carefully, quietly, the way I had learned to move my entire life. The first thing I did was hire a private investigator. Not a lawyer, not yet. I needed to know everything before I made a single move. I needed to know where Gloria was actually living. I needed to know exactly how much money Keisha had taken. I needed to know whether the power of attorney had been obtained legitimately or manipulated. And I needed to know who else in the family knew what had happened and had said nothing. The investigator worked for 3 weeks. He came back with a folder thicker than I expected. Gloria was living in a 1-bedroom subsidized apartment on the south side of Memphis. She had almost nothing with her. A few pieces of furniture, a television, a box of old photographs someone had packed carelessly, like they did not matter. The money trail was worse than I thought. The $187,000 from the house sale had gone directly into an account in Keisha's name, her personal account. From there, a portion had been spent on things that had nothing to do with Gloria. New furniture for Keisha's house, a vacation to Cancun, payments on Calvin's truck. The rest had been spread across small withdrawals over several months, calculated to avoid attention. And the family. Terrence knew. He had not known the full picture, but he knew the house had been sold. He knew Gloria had been moved. He had seen Keisha with money. He had called me on the phone and told me not to worry while his sister was dismantling our mother's life. Aunt Diane did not know. She had not been told. But when I called her carefully, without revealing anything, she said something that stopped me. She said, "Nadia, something feels off about that girl. I have been feeling it for months. Keep your eyes open." I kept them open, wide. By the end of May, I had everything. The forged documents, the money trail, the timeline, the proof that Keisha had committed fraud, elder exploitation, and forgery. I filed the criminal charges through my lawyer, but I also did something the system could not do for me, something that had to be done by hand. I bought the house back. It took 2 weeks to find the buyer, a young couple who had no idea about the history behind the sale. My company made them an offer 20% above what they had paid. They sold it immediately. They did not know who was buying it. The transaction went through a shell company I had set up months earlier. It was clean, it was legal, and Keisha had no idea. I now owned the house on Maple Creek Road, and I was not done. I sent the invitations out in September. A family reunion. I made it sound casual. I wrote in the group chat, "It has been too long. Let us all get together at the old house on Maple Creek Road this weekend. I am handling everything. Food, drinks, all of it. Just show up." I included Keisha, Terrence, Calvin, their kids, and a handful of extended family. Aunts, cousins, people who had known Gloria for decades, people who had watched me grow up in that house and called me a burden. Keisha responded first. She said she would be there. She did not ask how I had access to the house. She assumed, the way she always assumed, that I was doing something for her benefit. That was her weakness. She could never imagine I was doing anything that was not somehow connected to her. Aunt Diane called me directly. Her voice was careful. She said, "Nadia, what are you doing?" I told her to trust me. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "All right, I will be there." The day of the reunion was a Saturday in late September. The weather was perfect. I had spent the week before cleaning the house, setting it up to look exactly the way it had looked when we were children. Same kind of tablecloth, same lights on the porch. I cooked the food Gloria used to make on Sundays: collard greens, cornbread, fried chicken. The smell filled the house the same way it used to. People arrived around noon, cousins I had not seen in years. Calvin showed up with the kids, then Terrence, quiet and fidgeting. Then Keisha walked through the door. She stopped for a second. Something crossed her face that she covered quickly with a smile. She looked around the living room. She looked comfortable, like she belonged there. That was the look I had been waiting to see. The afternoon went on the way these things do. People ate. Keisha held court in the living room, laughing, telling stories. I stayed in the kitchen. I brought out food. I smiled. I let the evening breathe. It was after dinner when I walked into the living room. I did not raise my voice. I said, "Can everyone sit down for a minute? I have something I need to say." The room quieted. Keisha looked at me with a curious expression. Terrence shifted in his seat. Aunt Diane, in the corner, went very still. I stood in the middle of the room holding a manila folder. I did not open it right away. I looked at Keisha and I said, "I want to talk about this house." She smiled. She said, "What about it?" I said, "You sold it. You forged Mom's signature on the deed. You used the power of attorney you got while she could barely remember her own name, and you kept every dollar, $187,000. The room did not make a sound. Keisha's smile stayed on her face for about 3 seconds, then it fell off, all at once. I opened the folder and laid the documents on the coffee table. The deed, the forged signature, the bank records, the Cancun receipts, everything. Keisha looked at the documents. Then she looked at me. She opened her mouth. She said, "Nadia, you do not understand. I did what I had to do for this family." I said, "This house is mine now. I bought it back 3 weeks ago. You are standing in my house, Keisha." The color left her face, all at once. Aunt Diane stood up, walked to Gloria's old rocking chair and sat down. She looked at me and nodded once.
I gave them 1 week. I told Keisha, in front of everyone, that I had already filed criminal charges for fraud, elder exploitation, and forgery. The district attorney's office had the documents. There was nothing she could do to stop it. Then I told her something else, something that had nothing to do with the law. I was demolishing the house, not selling it, not donating it, tearing it down, to the ground. Every board, every brick, every nail. I was going to level it next Saturday, and she was welcome to come watch. Keisha stared at me. She said, "You cannot do that." I said, "It is my house." She said, "That is Mom's house. That is where we grew up." I said, "You destroyed it the moment you sold it out from under her. I am just finishing what you started." Calvin stepped forward. He said, "Nadia, this is insane. Let us talk about this like adults." I looked at him. I said, "You and Keisha planned this together. You spent the money together. Do not stand here and tell me to be reasonable." He did not say another word. Terrence said, "Nadia, please." His voice was small. I looked at my brother, the man who had watched our mother get moved out of her own home and had called me on the phone and told me not to worry. I said, "You had a chance to say something, Terrence. You chose not to." He looked down. The week passed. I watched Keisha's calls go to voicemail. I watched her send texts that started with begging and ended with threats. I did not respond to any of them. On Saturday morning, the demolition crew arrived at 7. I called Aunt Diane. She came and sat in a lawn chair across the street. She did not say anything. She just watched. Keisha showed up at 9. She came alone. She parked 2 blocks away and walked up. I saw her coming from where I was standing on the sidewalk, arms crossed. She stopped 10 feet from me. The performance was gone. What was underneath it looked like fear. She said, "Nadia, please, I am begging you. This is Mom's house." I said, "Mom does not live here anymore. You made sure of that." She said, "I will give the money back, all of it. I will do anything, just do not tear it down." I looked at her, this woman who had spent 40 years making me feel like I was nothing, who had stolen from our own mother, who had forged documents and lied to everyone and spent the money on vacations while Gloria sat alone in a subsidized apartment.
I said, "This is not about the money, Keisha. I am not going to let anyone in this family ever stand in this house again and feel like they won something." She started crying. Not the kind meant to be seen, the kind that comes out whether you want it or not. She said my name 3 times. Nadia, Nadia, Nadia. I turned to the crew and I nodded. The excavator moved into position. For one long moment, everything was still. Then the bucket came down. The roof caved inward. Dust exploded outward. The porch where I had sat as a child, the porch where I had heard my mother call me a burden, splintered into pieces. It took less than an hour to bring down 50 years. Keisha did not leave. She stood there the entire time. I did not turn around once. Not once. When it was over, I turned around. She was still standing there, crying, shaking. I looked at her. Then I said, "Do not call me again," and I walked away. People asked me afterward what I was going to do with the lot. Everyone assumed I was going to sell it, make the money back, move on. That is what a practical person would do. I did not sell the lot. I built a house, a new one, small, simple, 3 bedrooms, a porch that faces east so the morning light comes in first thing, a kitchen with a big window that looks out onto the yard, a magnolia tree I planted myself because Gloria had always loved magnolias and there had never been one on Maple Creek Road before. I built it for my mother. In December of that year, I went to Gloria's subsidized apartment and sat down across from her. She knew who I was that day. She had good days and bad days, and that was a good one. I told her I had a place for her. I told her it was new and clean and it was hers. She looked at me with those tired eyes and said, "Whose house is it, Nadia?" I said, "Yours, Mom. It has always been yours." I moved her in on a Sunday morning in January. The furniture was simple but comfortable. The bedroom had clean white sheets. The bathroom had a grab bar and a shower seat because I knew she would need them. The kitchen had her old dishes, the blue and white ones her mother had given her decades ago. I found them packed carelessly in a box at the subsidized apartment. I washed every single one and put them in the cabinet where she could see them. Gloria walked through the house slowly, touching things as she went. She ran her hand along the counter the way my father used to run his hand along the walls of the old house on Sunday mornings, like he was checking to make sure it was real. When she got to the porch, she stopped. She stood in the doorway and looked out at the yard, at the magnolia tree still small and young, at the quiet morning light. I brought her a cup of tea, black with 2 sugars, the same kind she had always drunk. I handed it to her, and we stood side by side and looked out at the yard together. The street was quiet. A bird was singing somewhere. The air was cold but clean. Gloria took a sip of her tea. She held the cup in both hands the way she always did. Then she said something I will carry with me for the rest of my life. She said, "I should have listened to you a long time ago, Nadia." I did not say it was okay. I did not say I forgave her. I just stood there beside her, close enough that our shoulders were almost touching. 2 women on a porch, one old and finally safe, one younger but not by much, finally done carrying something that was never hers to carry. The magnolia tree stood in the yard, small and quiet, already beginning to grow. That's where this story ends, not with a confrontation, not with a verdict. This story ends with a porch and a cup of tea, and a woman who spent her whole life being called a burden, finally sitting beside the person who said it in a house that nobody can ever take. They threw me away, and I rebuilt everything they destroyed, not for them, for her, and for myself. If you made it this far, you already know this story is not just about Nadia. It's about every single person who was ever told they were not enough by the people who were supposed to love them. It's about what happens when you stop believing the lie. Share this video right now. Put it on your page. Send it to someone you know who needed to hear this today, because there's someone out there right now believing they're a burden, and they are not. They never were. subscribe to this channel, turn on that bell, because I have more stories. Stories that will make you angry, stories that will make you uncomfortable, stories that will make you question everything you thought you knew about the people closest to you. This is Vintage Vengeance, and I am just getting started.